Hey everyone, welcome back to Audrey Kramer Coaching. I am so glad to have you here. And if you are new here, welcome. I'm so excited to have you. We've been talking the last couple of weeks about emotional intelligence. What is it? Why should it be important to you? And how you can improve? Because unlike your IQ, EQ or emotional intelligence is actually something that you can change, which is so cool. So last week we talked a little bit about one of the first cornerstones of emotional intelligence, and that is self-awareness. Just having an understanding of who you are as a person, what your triggers are, how you respond to those different types of things. And this week I want to talk about the next step, which is self-management. This is a little bit different than self-awareness. Self-awareness is just let's figure out who we are and how we interact with the world around us. Self-management is really specifically that action that you take in response to your emotions. So your body takes in stimuli, it goes through your emotional center, and then it goes into your action center or what you do about it. And what we want to do is we want to be able to steer the car, right? We don't want our emotions to drive us. I kind of think of it like highway hypnosis almost. You're on the road for miles and miles and miles, and then all of a sudden you're like, I have no idea how I got here. And having that self-management is kind of the same thing, right? We can oftentimes get into situations where we're just talking and we think everything is okay. And then all of a sudden that conversation has taken a wrong turn, or we find ourselves in a space where we're like, how did I get here? Like, this is not where I wanted to go. And maybe you missed the exit like 20 miles ago or something like that. So that's kind of the idea with that self-management, is to make sure that you're in control of where you're going and how you get there. I used to read a lot of fantasy books. I still kind of read some, but especially in heated situations, we get into that bloodlust, right? Of like, oh God, this is driving me so crazy. And like, you let that wholly take over. And I don't want that for you. And I don't want that for me. And I have spent a lot of time learning how to manage that for myself. So I wanted to pass on just a few different ideas of ways that you can manage yourself after you become self-aware. I don't know if we ever really become self-aware, right? That's a continual work in progress, and self-management is also going to be a continual work in progress. So first thing to be able to have good self-management, literally just breathe. I found this absolutely astounding that your brain uses up 20% of the oxygen in your body. So when you take a breath in and as you're breathing, 20% of that oxygen is just going towards your brain function, which is absolutely crazy, right? So if we want to be able to process things and handle them, we want to make sure that we're doing so from a good space, from a full capacity. So breathing is going to be super important. Back when I was in college, I had this audition that I had to do, and I was so nervous. And actually, the instructor had a sign on the door that just had this whole breathing exercise, because I'm sure nervousness was not something that only I experienced. But the idea was you would breathe in for a count of 4 through your nose, very important, and then you would hold it for 4, and then you would breathe out for 4. And this is something that you'll very commonly see like in yogic breathing, like you breathe in for 4 and you hold for 4 and you breathe out for 8. And there's all kinds of different variations of this that you can do. It doesn't really matter which way you do it, but the key thing is you want to make sure you're breathing from your diaphragm. So if you take your hand and you put it on your stomach and you breathe in, your hands should move out with your stomach. If you're only breathing from your chest is going to move up and down, but really you want to breathe from your stomach, and that's where you're going to get the most amount of oxygen. Take your time with this, right? Like oftentimes when it's like a heated situation, they say, oh, count to 10. When you're angry, count to 10. You can count to 10, you can do 3 deep breaths, whatever it is, but just give yourself that separation of space. So as your emotions are trying to take over, you can say, I hear you, cool, I'll be with you in just a second. I'm just going to take a few deep breaths. When I used to go to yoga all the time, I have a lot of stories about breathing apparently. When I used to go to yoga all the time, at the very end of class, we would do the corpse pose. And I swear it felt like 15 minutes. It might've been 10. It doesn't matter. But in that space of just breathing and being present with myself, literally every time I would have this giant life epiphany because I'd be going through some kind of garbage or difficult time or really big problem. And instead of just running the hamster wheel of emotions and thoughts that were with that, having that space to just sit and breathe and be with myself more often than not gave me a solution when I wasn't even looking for it. So take that space and realize that that's going to be a helpful thing for you, and it's not going to distract you. It's not going to make you late for whatever thing that you're trying to solve. It's actually going to be really helpful. So feel free to take that space. Next thing is to visualize success. Now, I had to think about this one for a minute when I read it because I'm like, well, most of the time you hear that in sports, right? So how can you, but if you think about it, it makes perfect sense, right? Athletes will think about their routine and they will visualize themselves performing it perfectly, and they'll do that over and over again because your brain sometimes has a hard time, like, am I just thinking this or is this actually happening? For some things, I will say. And so they do that all the time, and actually, study after study has shown that these visualization techniques have a significant impact on their ability to be successful at their event, in their competition, so on and so forth. We can do the same thing with conversations. In college, I used to work as a telemarketer, not my proudest moment. But one of the things it taught me was before you get on the phone, you have a script. And here is your script. And here are some things that might happen. And here's how you can respond to that. And we have those same options available to us in conversations that we have with significant others, with family members, with parents, with coworkers, with supervisors, with literally anyone, the grocery store clerk, right? So if you know you're about to come up across a difficult conversation, or you're not quite sure how it's going to go, or you're just nervous about it because there's a lot riding on this and you need to get it right, practice that conversation. There is absolutely nothing wrong with visualizing, okay, how is this going to go? And if they say this, what's my response going to be? And then just create literally the perfect conversation. Say you're going for a raise and you're not sure how it's going to go. Just make up that whole conversation in your head and have it be absolutely perfect. Obviously, you want to have some amount of realisticness in there, because if your boss is a certain way and you paint them as a totally other person, it might be a little difficult. So, be realistic about what that would look like and what choices you can make that are going to lead you to success, and just practice that in your head and get that successful moment in there. And that'll do a lot, because then when you walk in to have that conversation with whoever it is, you're going to have this confidence and you're going to have a very clear direction of where you want it to go. And that way, if it starts to steer off track, you have ideas about how to get it back moving in the direction that you want it to move. The last thing that I want to talk about today is that literally everything is a lesson. Everything. The people you don't like, the slow car that you're driving behind, the thing that you did that did not turn out the way that you wanted it to. Just take everything as a teachable moment. Sometimes, you get stuck in traffic and you're behind this god awful slow vehicle. Or I had somebody in one of the Facebook groups I'm in. They told a very similar story. It's like they usually get up at exactly the same time and they meet their taxi driver at the same time every day. And this one particular day, they were running really, really late. Like they woke up at the time that they usually are arriving at work. And so they were, communicating with their taxi driver. It was a friend, so it was like a regular driver for them. And on the way to work, the taxi driver was like, "Oh, you're not that late. I'm sure your boss will understand. It's okay. Like this happens. It's nothing to stress out about." And on their way to work, this was like a 20, 30-minute drive, there were 3 different accidents involving multiple cars. So, sometimes we feel like life isn't taking us in the direction that we want to go, but sometimes it's a blessing in disguise. Or sometimes it's teaching us something of flexibility or patience, or this is the type of person that I don't want to be. Or maybe that person is making very clear to you a value that you didn't know that you had. It's always been there, but it was just made clear to you in that very moment that, like, honesty is something that is very important to me, or trust is something that is very important to me, or gratitude is something that is very important to me. So sometimes these things just become clear in these little moments. And even though it's really frustrating because we want things to just be amazing all the time, It's not really the reality, right? There's always going to be something. So just try to find the lesson in every moment. And that will also help you kind of manage yourself and your emotions, because then you don't get wrapped up in all the drama. You can just take it and say, what is this teaching me? And you can grow from that and become a better person. So hopefully these tips helped. Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you are interested in subscribing, there's a little button down below that you can click. Otherwise, yeah, I can't wait to see you guys next week. We're going to get a little more into relationships with other people and how we deal with that. So thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.